Welcome. My name is Julian Fox. I'm the team leader of the Forest Monitoring and Data Platform team of the Forestry Division, and I'll be your moderator today. We're really grateful that you're able to join us on Earth Day, and we hope to make the next 90 minutes interesting and entertaining, and we hope you learn something new about our work at FAO. Firstly, some housekeeping. We have interpretation available in English, Spanish, French, and Portuguese. In Zoom, you can directly select your language channel. In the room, you can use the headsets provided for your preferred language, which can be adjusted using the small dial next to the volume knob. The session is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with all Zoom registrants via a follow-up email. And for Zoom participants, please use the chat and the Q&A functions to tell us where you're joining from and your organisation. We'd love to hear from you. And please use the Q&A to enter your questions. We have a team on standby to answer your questions online, and we can also pick up questions in the live session. For the live audience, we will have a Q&A session toward the end, so please do note down any questions. So, as I said, I think we are ready to get underway. So I'll quickly introduce what we'll be talking about today. 2 years ago on Earth Day, this exact day, we launched AIM4Forests, a new program developed with the United Kingdom to accelerate innovation in forest monitoring and to deploy these new solutions to forest countries for impact on the ground. We've been working hard for the last 24 months, and we come back together today, exactly 2 years later, to review and celebrate our progress. And this is the theme of the first session that we see projected here. We have opening remarks from the United Kingdom and FAO, and we'll present some highlights from our work over the last year. We are also very excited to be launching a new related initiative focused on monitoring ecosystem and nature restoration, again developed with the United Kingdom and many partners over the last years, and building on the United Nations decade of ecosystem restoration and all the work that has been done under that platform. It's called Accelerating Innovative Monitoring for Nature Restoration, AIM4Nature. This will be the focus of segment 2, where we will hear all about the new initiative from FAO, CBD, and our work with Indigenous Peoples in Brazil and Peru. Without further ado, I would like to kick off segment 1 and introduce Dr. Joanne McRae, the Head of Strategy of the United Kingdom's International Forests Unit. Over to you, Joanne, to get us started with some opening remarks.
Thanks so much, Julian. And it's a real pleasure to be here, particularly on Earth Day. And it was beautiful just to have a couple of minutes before this panel started, just to listen to the forest a little, and I think that definitely helped put me in the mood. So very happy Earth Day to everybody, and very happy birthday to AIM as well. And I'm really delighted to be joining you today on behalf of the UK government for the launch of the Accelerating Innovative Monitoring for Nature Restoration, and slightly more easy to say, AIM4Nature initiative. And we're really excited about this because it expands the already very successful UK AIM4Forests programme to improve monitoring and reporting of global ecosystem restoration efforts, going beyond and building on the kind of excellent work that's been done on forests already. And so as we prepare to launch this new piece, I just wanted us to take a couple of moments just to celebrate the work that's already been done under AIM4Forests. And then I'll just take a few moments just to say a few words around the AIM4Nature restoration piece. So by working together with our friends at UN, FAO and forest countries, what AIM4Forests has been able to do is to harness real cutting edge technology and expertise through which we've been able to support more than 3,500 people across 14 countries to develop their expertise and to use an increasing range of innovative tools and solutions to support forest monitoring. And that in turn has helped to unlock the equivalent of 79 million tons of emissions reduction work. And this is a really important achievement because we've got the kind of specific outcomes in terms of all of those tons of carbon that have been kind of prepared. But also critically, what we've been able to do working with that is to support the work of FAO and others to build the critical expertise which will be needed as we build a new global economy, one that's decarbonized and nature positive. And now what we're going to do is to build on the success of AIM4Forests and to expand all of that learning into the broader nature space. And I think one of the reasons we're very excited about this is it really emphasizes the importance of bringing the different Rio conventions together. This is not only going to speak to UNFCCC, which has traditionally been quite forest heavy, but it's going to begin to reach into the broader aims under the Convention for Biodiversity, as well as supporting delivery of the Sustainable Development Goals. And what we're excited about is that this work will take a really comprehensive approach to ecosystem restoration, building on the work that we've already done on forests and extending that into marine and freshwater ecosystems. Critically, this new initiative will also focus on supporting Indigenous peoples and local communities in contributing to biodiverse rich restoration. We know that sometimes restoration can be interpreted in a very narrow way and actually look much more like monoculture. That's not the kind of restoration we want to see. We want to see really biodiverse, very rich systems being rebuilt. And what this will mean in terms of the new program is it will strengthen the link between forest monitoring and support for Indigenous people. We know that empowering local communities who have such deep expertise in these ecosystems is absolutely critical to their future protection. And our investment in this program is part of the UK government's steadfast commitment to the agreements that were reached in Glasgow to halt and reverse forest loss by 2030. But then build out from that, as I was saying, to kind of deliver more broadly on the Rio Conventions. And across the piece, from a UK perspective, we are feeling like there's progress. So since 2011, our international climate finance programs in the forest space have avoided over 750,000 hectares, that's 750,000 hectares of ecosystem loss, the equivalent to 1 million football pitches. But we know that this is no time to rest. This is time to move further and faster, to turn the tide on deforestation, to rebuild our natural ecosystems. And that's why we're working closely with Brazil and other partners to ensure that we really capitalize on the moment that we have ahead of us in Belém to build even stronger consensus in favor of forest protection and nature restoration more broadly. And one of the things that we think is going to be quite key around that is about deepening that link between the forest agenda and the sustainable agricultural agenda. So we're really all looking forward to Belém very much. We know that 2025 will also be another big year for the AIM4Forests program as it expands into a further 3 countries, as well as launching the AIM for Nature. So we're really excited to see how those programs evolve, and we look forward to working with all of you to make sure that they're the success we know they can be. Many thanks.
Thank you very much, Joanne, for those really kind words. And thanks again to the United Kingdom for the great collaboration on AIM4Forests and AIM for Nature. You're more than a donor, you're really a partner in these programs, which is really wonderful. I would now like to introduce Dr. Jimin Wu, the Director of FAO's Forestry Division, for his opening remarks. Over to you, Jimin.
Thank you, Julian. Distinguished participants, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, a big welcome to all of you in person or online to this very important Earth Day celebration. We actually come together at a critical juncture for the planet. The climate and biodiversity crises are escalating, and we are seeing increasing threats to forests from actually uncontrolled wildfires, pest outbreaks, drought, land use change, and other pressures. So this in turn is putting global forest food security at risk. So yet we can still limit climate change, conserve biodiversity, and secure sustainable livelihoods by placing forests and other ecosystems at the heart of solutions. So the global community has committed to holding deforestation and restoring at least 1 billion hectares of degraded land by 2030. And turning this important commitment into progress on the ground requires accurate, reliable, and timely data. So that is why FAO is working hard with its members and partners at the forefront of forest and ecosystem monitoring to provide countries with solutions, and as well as knowledge and platforms they need to act with confidence. So we are putting our weight behind innovative monitoring for the conservation, restoration, and sustainable use of forests through accelerating innovative monitoring for forest programs, or AIM4Forests, which is generously funded by the government of the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. In 2024 alone, more than 3,500 people in 14 countries were supported through the program. From the Amazon to the Southeast Asia, countries are being equipped to generate, analyze, and use forest data with great transparency and ownership. So FAO's forest monitoring and e-learning curriculum is another important initiative. It aims to strengthen institutional and technical capacity to meet monitoring requirements and transparency framework requisites. So far, the curriculum has reached more than 15,000 learners, including at least 2,500 participants in the recent course on national forest inventories. Open Forest, an open source knowledge platform launched by FAO more than a decade ago, is offering new solutions like Arena, Ground, and WISP. These applications are transforming the way we collect, analyze, and report forest data, and are increasing the transparency of supply chains. So they promise to make a difference in ensuring sustainable forest management across sectors. And last but not least, we are investing in the future through the Young Forest Champions Initiative, which is empowering youth in Ghana, Kenya, Peru, Uganda, and Zambia to lead conservation and restoration efforts in their communities. So, ladies and gentlemen, combined, all these initiatives are building momentum towards improved monitoring of conservation and restoration. So today, I'm pleased to announce that we launch a new initiative that will add to the momentum. So the title of the new initiative is Accelerating Innovative Monitoring for Nature Restoration, or AIM for Nature. So also generously supported by the UK government, AIM for Nature will complement AIM4Forests by moving beyond forests to cover all ecosystems. It will support countries in tracking progress towards Target 2 of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, Target 2 of it, which calls for the restoration of at least 30% of degraded ecosystems by 2030. So the AIM for Nature initiative will address a critical gap, according to a recent survey by the Secretariat of the CBD Convention. 80% of countries lack the capacity to report on restoration progress. So AIM4Nature will provide cutting-edge technology, harmonized data, and tailored, say, capacity development to ensure that restoration efforts are measured and reported and are impactful. So AIM4Nature will also champion biocentric restoration approaches in partnership with the indigenous peoples in Brazil and Peru. So it is vital that we recognize the unique knowledge and leadership held by indigenous peoples in conserving and restoring forests and other ecosystems. Together, AIM4Forests and AIM4Nature represent a comprehensive, knowledge-driven, and respectful approach to conserving, restoring, and sustainable using ecosystems, while ultimate aim is to help achieve climate goals, biodiversity targets, and community resilience. So the path forward is clear. With better data, strong partnership, and inclusive innovation, we can empower people to restore and sustainably manage ecosystems and safeguard our planet for future generations. So I'm grateful to all the talented and dedicated people involved in this work, which is making an important contribution to planetary health. So happy Earth Day. Thank you. Over to you, Julian.
Thank you very much, Jimin. Your support for our work on monitoring and innovation has been greatly appreciated over the last couple of years. After that brilliant start, with thanks to Joanne and Jimin, let's jump into some presentations on the overall progress of AIM4Forests and some highlights. And to help us do that, I'd like to introduce some of the team members to my left. Firstly, Ghislaine Gill, immediately to my left, a forest monitoring specialist, who will present some of the highlights of AIM4Forests from the past 2 years. Then we'll hear from Rocio Condor, forestry officer, on our forest monitoring e-learning curriculum. And last but not least, we'll hear from Eva Natara, MRV specialist on the Young Forest Champions initiative, which she conceived and continues to grow successfully. So thanks so much. Over to you, Ghislaine, Rocio, and Eva.
Thank you, Julian. I will now share some highlights from the AIM4Forests program, which is a global program complementary to the new AIM4Nature initiative. And this presentation has 3 parts: a general part, general project information, then some of the main achievements of 2024, and then some of examples of what we've been doing this year in 2025. As mentioned before, AIM4Forests was launched exactly 2 years ago on Earth Day. It's funded by the UK as part of their international climate finance portfolio. It aims to accelerate innovative monitoring for forests, and there's 3 interlinked goals. At the global level, it's about developing and disseminating technical knowledge, innovative platforms, global databases, and we address methodological gaps. At the country level, we address gaps in countries' national forest monitoring and MRV systems. And last but not least, we aim to enhance the participation of indigenous peoples in forest monitoring. So the project has a duration of 5 years, ending in 2028. The budget is 31.5 million Great British pounds, and the program will support up to 20 tropical forest countries. And so far, implementation has been going well. For our first year of implementation, the program received an A+ from the UK evaluations team, which means that AIM4Forests met and in some cases exceeded its targets for 2023. We just concluded the same process of annual evaluation over 2024, as well as the midterm review of the program. And based on the results so far, AIM4Forests is seen as a highly relevant program in addressing global and country-driven needs in forest monitoring, with concrete benefits to the countries and a range of stakeholders, including indigenous peoples. So what do we do? AIM4Forests provides technical assistance to tropical forest countries, and we focus on 4 thematic areas of support: MRV for forest mitigation, forest data for better resource management, forest data for ecosystem restoration, and forest data for transparent commodities. For an overview of all the countries we work with, you can see the animation behind me. Let's see if, so this is the map of all the countries we work with. This includes countries in the 3 forest basins. So in Africa, the Congo Basin, DRC. In Asia, Southeast Asia Basin, we work with Indonesia and Papua New Guinea. And in Latin America, the Amazon Basin. So that's Peru, Brazil, Colombia, Bolivia. These are some of the countries we work with. And as mentioned before, in 2025, so this year, we will provide technical assistance to an additional 3 countries: Costa Rica, Nigeria, and the Philippines. So some highlights over last year. In 2024, our team supported 14 countries, and we built the capacities of more than 3,500 individuals. On screen, you can see a group picture of nearly 200 experts whom gathered for a South-South exchange last November, which was organized in collaboration with GFOI and the Forest Data Partnership to exchange knowledge and lessons learned. Other achievements over last year on the screen are the new WISP tool, which is an open source solution to support compliance with deforestation-related regulations, and a publication to provide clarity on reversal risks in forest-based mitigation. Other examples of achievements last year is the enhancement of Indigenous peoples' participation in forest monitoring through the launching of an e-learning course together with UNDP. And we also supported the adoption of the headline indicator on land use and land tenure for Indigenous peoples under the Global Biodiversity Framework of the CBD. So these are some examples of the activities implemented last year. So now I would like to highlight 3 examples of what we are working on this year. First off, we will launch a community of practice in 3 regions, and these communities of practice will give guidance to the development of materials and tools tailored to Indigenous peoples' priorities. Second, together with the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, we will launch Peat Emit, which is a global database of peatland emission factors addressing a data gap in national greenhouse gas inventories. And lastly, we will engage with emerging climate finance initiatives, for instance, unpacking UNFCCC Article 6.2 and the country reporting requirements. So these are 3 examples of everything our team is working on this year. There is much more, notably capacity development through e-learning. And for this, I will give the floor to my colleague Rocio, who is leading these efforts.
Thank you, Gis, for providing us with insightful highlights from AIM4Forests program. Now let's explore one of our major capacity development initiatives, a curriculum which has been equipping learners around the world with crucial forest monitoring skills for climate action. In collaboration with the FAWI Learning Academy, we developed the Forest Monitoring for Climate Action curriculum, which continues to be updated with new courses. This comprehensive e-learning program covers various aspects of forest monitoring, including forest inventories, remote sensing using CPAL, and reporting to the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and the Paris Agreement. The curriculum is self-paced, completely free, accessible anytime, and available in multiple languages. Each course concludes with a final certification test designed to verify that participants gain the key skills and competencies. Building on the self-paced courses, we also offer online facilitated courses that provide customized role-based learning paths For example, in 2024, from 11 September to 21st October, we delivered the National Forest Inventory online facilitated course. This course offered a unique learning experience featuring direct interaction with experts on the subject, live learning sessions, and collaborative discussion forums. We are thrilled to announce the launch of the National Forest Inventory Learning Journey. This course covers the key phases of a national forest inventory, from planning and implementation to data gathering and reporting. Adapted into a self-paced format, it shares the content and resources developed for the online facilitated version of the course. This learning journey allows users to earn 3 different digital badges upon successfully passing the final test. If you missed the facilitated version last year, now is your chance to build your skills on your own schedule. Looking ahead, I'm pleased to inform you that from 7 May to 6 June 2025, we will be delivering a new online facilitated course. This course will dive into the importance of institutionalizing a robust national forest monitoring system that is transparent and sustainable. By the end of the course, participants will be able to understand core elements and best practices of a national forest monitoring system, from governance to data sharing strategies. Apply strategic and legal tools effectively to strengthen institutional arrangements and actively contribute to improving data sharing and transparency. Registration for this course is now closed after attracting more than 3,000 registrations from all over the world, demonstrating its widespread appeal. But don't just take it from us. Let's hear directly from people who have taken the courses themselves, with testimonials collected through social media and interviews.
The FAO's e-learning series, especially on forest monitoring and climate actions, has really opened my eyes on matters of forest conservation. Previously, we never used to use data, forest data.
Cette opportunité avec l'Académie d'e-learning de la FAO est venue
Academy came at the perfect time,
au moment où
just as I was introducing the National Forest Inventory courses in our curriculum.
As of the end of March 2025, around 15,000 web learners embarked on an educational journey through self-paced and online facilitated courses. Stakeholders from a range of sectors join us, including government, agencies, non-governmental organizations, and academia. Women, youth, and Indigenous people are increasingly represented in the courses, fostering broader and more inclusive engagement in the sector. The availability of knowledge products in multiple languages, such as e-learning series, tools, and publications, has been instrumental in expanding access and encouraging participation from a diverse range of stakeholders. This curriculum is a fantastic opportunity to deepen your knowledge and skills in forest monitoring, ensuring we contribute effectively to climate action as a collective. Be sure to explore the links to access the multilingual curriculum, Forest Monitoring for Climate Action. And now I pass the word to Eva, who is leading a really nice program where youth are being engaged.
Thank you, Rocio, for showcasing the importance of the forest monitoring and climate action e-learning series and those powerful testimonials from the academia and youth. I am Eva, and I'll be presenting on the Young Forest Champions Initiative. So how did this program begin? It started in Kenya from 2021 to 2023, where Kenya was implementing the IMPRESS project. It was an FAO and the Kenya Forest Service initiative. And the aim of the project was to measure deforestation, restoration monitoring, and mangrove forest inclusion in the national forest monitoring system in the country. So as we worked, we realized that one thing was important. Forest monitoring is not just about the trees, it's also about the people. And it was important for us to ensure that every voice was heard. So we made sure that at least 30% of all the participants who were attending every meeting were women. Together with the Kenya Forest Service, we launched a call for applications, and we selected 10 outstanding women across Kenya to become the first young forest champions. So after Impress, the AIM4Forests project was launched, and we continued to engage the champions in the in-country workshops. In late April 2024, we had a series of 30 minutes conversations with the champions, and we just wanted to understand from them their aspirations and to also ensure that their voices are heard in the government-led forest monitoring expert discussions. And in these images, you can see the champions doing just that, actively participating in a country-led planning event, exchanging ideas with experts, and proudly representing their communities. Mentorship in this context means access, it means exposure, and it meant real opportunities to apply learning, like Olga, whom we saw in Rocio's presentation, who used the knowledge from CEPAL to analyze forest cover change in Ramogi Forest, and she involved her community members to restore the forest using the indigenous knowledge, and that, as we see, is impact in action. So some of the products that we developed were based on the fact that in 2024 alone, the Young Forest Champions engaged over 10,500 community members, and they planted over 150,000 trees across the country. So to celebrate this incredible achievement, FAO Kenya published an article during the World Environment Day, and it was actually picked by a national news agency, shining a spotlight on these young change makers. And this didn't stop there. The champions were also featured in a World Forest Voice podcast, which is available in the World Food Forum Spotify channel, and they were called the COFO Champions. This kind of recognition matters. It gives them visibility, and it shows them and the world that youth-led action is not only valid, but it's also vital. And to amplify the voices further for these young forest champions and farm leaders, we partnered with the Forest and Farm Facility at FAO to host a special side event at the World Food Forum flagship event in October last year in Rome. We called it the Forest and Farm Champions, Rural Youth Shaping Tomorrow's Forest and Farms. And it did exactly that. We saw this rural youth coming to the headquarters and being placed at the center of global discussions around forestry, agriculture, and climate resilience. And to amplify these voices, this year we are aiming to scale up this program. In 2024, we aim to take the lessons learned from Kenya and to scale this initiative to the other countries in Peru, Ghana, Uganda, and Zambia. And through the work plan of activities, we aim to empower these young people to lead forest restoration and to drive impactful changes in their communities. So we launched the call of applications in late January, and in a span of 2 weeks, we received over 1,500 applications from young people around the world. So what began as a call to empower youth in forest monitoring in Kenya now has become a sort of a global movement. And this wouldn't have been possible without the tireless efforts of our partners, such as the World Food Forum, the Ministry of Youth, Sport and Arts in Zambia, the Kenya Forest Service, the Pontifical Catholic University of Peru, the Forestry Commission of Ghana, the British Embassy Lima, and the Youth Go Green. I would also like to acknowledge the partners who are attending online and the young champions who are joining us from across the world, and also for our FAO country partners in the countries. this initiative would not have been possible if it was not for the work that you have put in. And for that, I would like to say that in case you would like to keep in touch, we have kept the details, all the information in the chat box, and you can always reach out to us. We would love to hear from you. So thank you so much. Back to you, Julian.
Thank you so much, Eva, Rocio, and Ghislaine. That was absolutely brilliant. Colleagues have also been adding additional information and highlights from the program in the chat. And this actually concludes the first segment. But please, if there are any questions, keep them until the second segment, either in the audience or I already see there's been some questions and answers in the online chat. So thanks for that. We'll have a rotation of panelists. So thank you again, Jimin, Ghislaine, Rocio, Eva, and Joanne. And I would like to now invite Yelena, Pablo, and Ashley to the panel for the second segment. So everybody's very welcome to stand up and stretch their legs for a moment while we do a physical changeover. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, colleagues. That was the quickest changeover I've ever seen. We're right on time, which is absolutely brilliant. And this is the segment I think we've all been anticipating, the launch and presentation of our new initiative, which we're so excited about, accelerating innovative monitoring for nature restoration. To help us do that, I would like to introduce Yelena Feingold, who leads our work on restoration monitoring. Over to you, Yelena.
Thank you so much, Julian, and thank you, colleagues, it was great to hear about the highlights over the last 2 years of AIM4Forests. And I'm so excited to launch today AIM4Nature, a new output of AIM4Forests. So we'll be building on the incredible work that has been ongoing over the past 2 years. And now really focusing in on nature restoration, which is a glimmer of hope. So we hope that this will be inspirational to you. So in terms of the challenges that we're addressing with nature, with AIM4Nature, this output focuses on the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework Target 2 on ecosystem restoration. The target aims to restore at least 30% of degraded ecosystems, covering all ecosystems. And countries have made massive commitments in order to reach this target. We have over 1 billion hectares of land that have been committed for restoration, but countries have also expressed that there are many barriers to actually implement these commitments. And so this program aims to move from these commitments to monitoring and to actually implementing restoration. So countries have reported that, or 70% of countries have reported that there are gaps in institutional coordination. 80% have reported that there's a lack in the capacity to collect data on restoration reporting. And all countries have said that have requested capacity development to adapt the global methodologies to a national context. And so with this new program, it builds on the work of FAO with the Convention on Biological Diversity and the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration in order to address these major gaps to implementing restoration. It aims to work with countries to create data on restoration, to create a global data set co-created with countries, and to enhance the transparent monitoring and supporting the reporting to the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The project duration is 4 years, and the total budget of the project will be about $9 million US. And so this project really supports a clear mandate from the CBD and from the UNCCD, as well as the UNFCCC, all of the Rio conventions. And so from the CBD, FAO is the custodian of the restoration target, Target 2. The headline indicator of this target is area under restoration, and we have been working on building a methodology for monitoring and reporting that restoration, and this project then supports countries in implementing that methodology for reporting. And there's a mandate within various decisions in the CBD and UNCCD to support this work in terms of reporting. Some of the expected impacts and outcomes of this program include enhancing global monitoring with this global data set that's really compiled by countries for consistent, transparent, accessible, and reliable data to make sure that restoration efforts are accessible and measurable. It supports the global reporting frameworks, as I've mentioned, the CBD, UNCCD, SDGs, UNFCCC, all of these various acronyms and frameworks. It addresses the capacity gaps that have been identified by countries and aims to fill these gaps. And it enables really acting on the commitments that have been made by these countries. And so there are 6 outputs of this program, and these activities are all interlinked and build on one another. And it's structured to support countries in the reporting to the CBD. Reports will be due in 2026. That will be the 7th national report, and in 2029. And I think we'll hear more from our colleague at CBD, a bit more about the CBD process as well. So in terms of the first output of the project, this is to host a Target 2 partnership. So to bring the global community together, as well as countries and support centers that have been nominated by the CBD to accelerate the reporting on restoration. And so this is to engage the experts, partners, and countries in developing guidance, methods, data sets, and technical collaboration for nature restoration, monitoring, and reporting. And we're working on identifying various working groups that then would support this work. And this really builds on the UN Decade and includes the Task Force on Monitoring of the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration as an overarching structure to host these working groups, and really builds on the work that we've been leading on the decade in the last 5 years. Then the second activity is to build a global data set from the countries up. So working with 4 countries, those countries are Brazil, Peru, Kenya, and the Philippines, developing work plans, identifying capacity gaps, and building up restoration monitoring frameworks and platforms to support the monitoring and reporting of restorations at the country level. And so to dive a little bit more in detail, to provide one example in terms of how we're working with countries, here's an example from Brazil. In Brazil, we're working with the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change and working towards the implementation of Plan of Veg, or the national plan for nature restoration or natural vegetation restoration, which aims to restore 12 million hectares of native restoration. And FAO is supporting in identifying and addressing capacity gaps, to a technical report to design the national monitoring platform of this plan, and to provide technical support in a multi-stakeholder framework, including workshops on restoration, and supporting technical work, which is really the core of the work in terms of area estimation and data validation on restoration at the national scale. And that work will be for the COP30, which will be in Brazil towards the end of this year. In terms of the technical work, we aim to develop technical guidance for key ecosystems. We'll be hearing for Ashley on one of the first technical products of this project on freshwater ecosystems. We're also working on marine ecosystems and productive ecosystems, how agri-food systems fit into restoration, and how they're key for restoration as well. And developing technical solutions in the framework for ecosystem restoration monitoring, linking to open forest tools, showing how geospatial data can be used for restoration monitoring across various ecosystems. So going beyond forest to other key ecosystems for restoration, including forest as well, which are also very important. And working with countries to build and test these tools. And then we're working on then communicating this data through high-profile reports, including the FRA 2020, the FRA 2025, excuse me, Nature Restoration Gap Report, the State of World's Forest Report, and a report to the UN General Assembly, including and additionally publications, peer-reviewed publications, and linkages to carbon and nature restoration. We'll be working with the regional centers of the CBD. I'll leave my colleague Christina from the CBD, who will speak more in detail about this work with the sub-regional centers, but we plan to host the first workshop with the ASEAN Center for Biodiversity this July, which we're very much looking forward to. And this is how we'll scale the work with the countries to the region through these technical support centers. And our last activity will be on Indigenous peoples and supporting Indigenous-led restoration, which will also have presentations that will go more into detail into this work. So I'll leave it to the experts to speak further about this work. And this is a huge program with quite an ambitious work plan, and we're really relying on our partners and teams working on scaling through the technical support centers of the CBD, and working with our country partners and the UN Decade on ecosystem restoration, as well as our collaborators that are collecting data sets on nature restoration, to work together through this Target 2 partnership to really make sure that we deliver on this project and on the ambitious restoration commitments. So I thank you for your time, and I pass it back to our moderator, Julian.
Thank you, Yelena. That was absolutely brilliant. Now I have the pleasure to pass to our really close collaborator, the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. We know them as the CBD. And they'll be represented today by Christina Taborchanas. Sorry if I got that.
You got it.
Who is a Program Management Officer from the CBD. Over to you, Christina. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I'm very delighted to be here on behalf of the Secretariat of the Convention on Biological Diversity. I'd just like to start by wishing everyone a happy Earth Day. And just to say that we at the CBD are so excited to be part of the AIM4Nature, which is contributing to the Target 2 roadmap as well that Yelena mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. I'm just going to give you a quick run through some of our decisions. As many of you know, we just finished our resumed COP16 in Rome at the end of February. So the focus now for the next 5 years is on implementation and on monitoring progress. In decision 13/35, we always talk about our decisions, on cooperation with other conventions and international organizations. The parties invited the FAO, UNEP, the Rio Conventions, and other partners, including through the roadmap for Target 2, to continue supporting implementing this framework. At the same time, we had another decision, 13/3, where the parties took steps to operationalize the technical and scientific cooperation mechanism that Yelena mentioned in her presentation. Next slide. So this is what our mechanism looks like. Sorry, the slide is a little bit wonky, but basically this was adopted at COP15, and it consists of a network of existing organizations, which we're calling them sub-regional technical and scientific cooperation support centers. There's about 15 of them, with 3. Then we also have 3 affiliated ones. We have 5 in Africa, 3 in the Americas, 4 in Asia, 2 in Europe, and 1 in Oceania. And these are existing entities, organizations that are hosting these sub-regional support centers. And the purpose of them is to facilitate technical and scientific cooperation among parties, capacity building, knowledge management in support of the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Also, we have a global coordination entity, and at COP16, the parties decided that this was to be hosted by the Secretariat. We're still working on that to operationalize that. And of course, this mechanism is taking direct orders from the parties and then reporting back to the parties. Next slide, please. I also wanted to mention a bit the decisions on the monitoring and review, which is very important, and that's what we're going to be working on very intensely in the next few years. We have the decisions 16/31 and 6 on the monitoring framework for the Global Biodiversity Framework. And we also have decision 16/32 on mechanisms for planning, monitoring, and review, including the global review that Yelena referred to. And in these decisions, parties are called upon to take consistent approach in national ecosystem monitoring across the goals and targets based on a national ecosystem classification. Parties are invited to use the global ecosystem typology or an equivalent methodology and cross-reference national ecosystems data with JET levels 2 and 3. In these decisions, they're also requesting that this mechanism support countries to develop their monitoring capacity. And as was mentioned by Yelena, there's going to be a global review of collective progress at both COP17 and 19. which will include recommendations from parties and organizations and other stakeholders on how to address challenges in implementation. This review will be a target-by-target assessment towards all 23 targets, including the 2030 mission and progress towards the goals. Next, please. Just wanted to mention the Target 2 roadmap towards planning and reporting on Target 2. This is something that existed before. It's a partnership. It includes FAO, the Rio Conventions, IUCN, UNDP, UNEP, and other organizations. Started off in 2022 with the adoption of Target 2. There were some workshops in 2023 and capacity building in 2024. And now we are in 2025 with this new initiative that, thanks to the funding from AIM4Nature, is helping us to engage with the sub-regional support centers. So that's where we are right now, and this is going to be going on until 2030. Next, please. So how did we go about this? Well, we put out a call for expressions of interest to all 15 of the sub-regional technical scientific support centers. The call was inviting them to express interest to conduct sub-regional workshops and training of trainers, provide technical and methodological backstopping to countries, help analyze restoration data to track progress in sub-region, and gather feedback from countries and collect best practices. The expected outcomes are to fast-track data compilation and enable reporting on progress for Target 2, enable regional and sub-regional support centers to provide continued and sustained support to countries, and promote regional and interregional dialogues on ecosystem restoration to facilitate regional global community of practice and a community of knowledge. Next, please. So these were the entities these are our sub-regional centers that were selected to support the Target 2 partnership. Starting this year and into next year, we're going to, as Yelena mentioned, the first, I think, sub-regional or regional workshop will be with ASIAN, the Center for Biodiversity, that's based in the Philippines. We're going to be working with Alexander von Humboldt Institute, based in Colombia, and the Regional Center for Mapping of Resources and Development, that's based in Nairobi, Kenya. And part of this work will also engage the Secretariat, the SPREP, which is the Secretariat of the Pacific Regional Environmental Program, to provide technical assistance, the Central American Commission on Environment and Development, and the South African National Biodiversity Institute. Also, we have the Sahara and Sahel Observatory and IUCN Eastern Europe and Central Asia. And then there's going to be another series of regional workshops and training of trainers in 2027 and 2028, which will engage COMIFAC in Cameroon and the International Union for Conservation of Nature Regional Office for West Asia. Next. Just to give you a little bit of an overview of where we're at, to date, 49 revised NBSAPs have been submitted to the Secretariat. The 7th reporting cycle has been launched with a deadline for countries to submit their reports in February of 2026. Big efforts are now being put towards building data and knowledge on ecosystem restoration in the context of Target 2. These need to be reflected in the global report on collective progress. Also on strengthening and building new collaborations with partners and initiatives. And this is an example of this new initiative. And there's going to be a restoration day at COP17 to take stock of the global restoration progress and celebrate success and correct the course to achieve the 2030 mission. Next. Thank you. Thank you very much. That's it.
Thank you so much, Christina, and thanks to the CBD for the excellent collaboration. We've been working together for several years, and it's a pleasure. So our new initiative will support nature restoration at the Rio Convention level, the global level, the national level, we've heard, but also at the local level. And this is, I think, where everybody gets very excited when we begin interfacing with real people on the ground. And I'm delighted to introduce Pablo from FAO's Indigenous People Unit to introduce the new work being launched in Brazil and Peru under this initiative. It's called Biocentric Restoration. Over to you, Pablo, to facilitate this session and with the countries.
Thank you so much, Julian. And for us, it's a pleasure to be part of this launch of Aim for Nature and supporting this process to expand monitoring processes, but also indigenous-led restoration actions. And we will introduce you about this global program of Indigenous Peoples Biocentric Restoration, which is connected, obviously, with Target 2 of the CBD, of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework on restoration, but also with Target 3 that recognizes indigenous territories, and Target 22, which is related to indigenous people knowledge. You know that also FAO is the custodian of the indicator of this target. So it is a pleasure to give the floor to John Fernandez de la Renoir, who is the head of the FAO Indigenous Peoples Unit. He is in New York now in the UN Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues in the middle of the negotiations, but he will share the experience and the relevance of this global program on indigenous biocentric restoration, which is also connected with AIM4Forests and with this launch of Aim for Nature. John, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Pablo and colleagues. Can you hear me well?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, I don't see myself, but I can see you. So, but first of all, congratulations for the event and streamed and grateful thanks to the donor, to the UK for the program, but also to Julian and his team for allowing us to collaborate and participate in this very extremely important initiative for all of us. And right now in New York, yesterday, the UN Permanent Forum elected an Inuit leader, an Inuit woman, as the new president for this mandate of the UN Permanent Forum. And this is very significant of the relevance and importance that the indigenous peoples are giving to biodiversity and biodiversity conservation. But I invite you, colleagues, friends, to please watch the opening remarks of His Excellency, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Gutierrez, yesterday, when he opened the UN Permanent Forum. And he made a call to the entire world of really getting serious and walking the talk when we say that indigenous peoples are the guardians of biodiversity, the best guardians and stewards of the biodiversity remaining in our planet, and to move from words into actions and to leave behind preconceived ideas about biodiversity and listen to the real experts who are the indigenous peoples. And he made a very appealing speech to all of us on the importance of biocentrism, but more important, of the relevance of considering indigenous peoples as actors and not as mere spectators on what is going on, being then at the front line of climate change, and very often suffering the effects of climate change that have not been created by their food systems, have not been created by their ancestral traditional knowledge system. It's very important, the call, he made 4 important points, but one of them is the UN has created a dedicated task force to look at energy transition based on the rare earths and the rare minerals that are strategic for the world. And as you know, the large majority of these earths and minerals are in indigenous people's lands. So we need to really, and I take this opportunity to make a call to all of you to consider indigenous peoples in all of your activities. The Undersecretary General also made a plea to more funded channel and dedicated to indigenous peoples led and activities with indigenous peoples. And certainly we are below the mark, all of us in the UN, in the countries, and across the different funding mechanisms, as well as the donors. So we need to do a consolidated effort if we are to address the root cause of climate change and biodiversity loss. I'm going to be talking about the global program on indigenous peoples biocentric restoration. This was started in 2018 by the Indigenous Peoples Unit in FAO with different indigenous organizations. The approach is extremely innovative because in a way what it does is it puts indigenous people's knowledge at the center of the equation. It restores degraded lands, it restores degraded territories by restoring the lost memory of these territories and these ecosystems through indigenous people's ancestral knowledge. And this is done with indigenous women at the center, indigenous youth, we have a system that is based on the farmer field schools, but that we call schools of life, where the inter and intra generational transmission of knowledge is guaranteed to ensure first the reinforcement of the language, but more important, to put at the center the botanical knowledge and ethnobotanical knowledge of the elders in all the indigenous communities across the world. And it's fascinating what we learn. Why do we call it biocentric? I think here you see some photos of the bridges of life. This is from Northeast India. And the Khasi people, what they do is they weave the roots of these trees, and nature over the years makes these bridges stronger and stronger. And this is the base, this is at the basic core, and it's a very good image to illustrate the philosophy and the cosmogony of Indigenous Biocentric Restoration Program. What it does is it puts at the center Indigenous peoples' knowledge, placing Indigenous peoples not only as subjects of rights, but also as knowledge holders capable of providing solutions that are valid for all of us in the context of the challenges we are facing, but with the Indigenous peoples' cosmogony and the value of life across the planet at the center. The program has boomed in importance, as I mentioned earlier. It started in Thailand and India, followed by Ecuador and Peru. Today, we have 4 governments that are working with us, the government of Brazil through the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples, the government of Peru and the government of Bolivia working through different ministries, the Ministry of Environment and the Ministry of Development, and of course, Costa Rica, which is an extremely important country for us. But now there's requests from Kenya to join, from Mexico, from Guatemala, and we are starting activities in Nepal in the coming 2 weeks. Let me move to the next slide. And of course, some of the salient points are, of course, the regional Andean corridor that we've been requested to create across 2 countries in Peru and Bolivia to restore the degraded water lenses in the Andean plateau, but more important also to ensure that there's an ecosystemic restoration of key vegetation, native vegetation of quenuas, of coyes, of cantutas, to ensure that the vanishing guanaco and the vanishing suri can be kept in the territory and can have biological and ecosystemic corridors to preserve themselves. Very important is the work in Brazil. We started in the Caatinga bioma, but now there's a request from the Ministry of Indigenous Peoples to restore more than 75,000 hectares degraded by intensive agricultural and livestock that have been given back through secure tenure systems for indigenous nations in the country. And last but not least, the national program in Costa Rica. I will be talking in the next slide. So let me now center a little bit on the schools of life. And the schools of life is a way of ensuring that the vanishing knowledge of the elders at the time that they passed away is transmitted on time to the youth. And the best way to transmit these knowledges is not in books, is not in stories, but is to put them into practice. And so we are doing with the abuelas and abuelos sabios, the sabios and sabias, the wise men and wise women, in this case in the Andes, that are transmitting their knowledge to restore the areas around the Titicaca Lake that, as many of you know, is extremely threatened by a number of environmental impacts, most of them man-made, but also climate change related. Today, we have more than 100 schools of life all over the world, and 72 are in the Andean area, where the idea has been picked up and the approach has been picked up, and is resulting in a plethora of ethnobotanical knowledge of many plants that are endangered today that were being used not so many years ago. Let me move here. You see some pictures on the restoration efforts that we are doing with local species, local vegetation. Of course, it's very important the cover with ichu, that Andean plant that protects the humidity, but more importantly is the restoring of degraded lands. And you see the level of aridity and erosion that you can witness in these pictures. It's very important to restore through quenuas and coyes. These are some of the Andean ancestral trees that infiltrate the water into the waterbed that today have been eradicated, that had been really cut down, and we face tremendous situations of dryness associated with this lack of ancestral trees that infiltrate the water. In the next slide, you can see some of the work we are doing in Costa Rica. We started with a number of organizations with the Beriberi nation, but working with the Kabata Konana, a group of very active women that were extremely interested in starting with the schools of life and the community greenhouses of native species to restore today more than 100 hectares in an area that was again damaged by intensive agriculture and intensive livestock exploitation. In the next slide, you can see how Costa Rica, one of the things that they did is they turned the pilots that we started into a national program announced by the President of the Republic. And as we speak, we are identifying the team that is drafting this national program to engage the different nations in Costa Rica. Is 14 different indigenous peoples that are organized through the Mesa Nacional Indígena to act in more than 24 different territories across the country and restore both degraded lands in indigenous peoples' territories as well as in other territories that are not indigenous. But what is pioneering by Costa Rica is the de facto recognition of indigenous peoples as the best restorers, if you allow me to use that word, of degraded lands, and also the recognition of biocentrism as the right spiritual and right approach to give value to nature in itself. In Brazil, we started working in the bioma Caatinga with the Shukuru people, and the work has been astonishing, recovering also bees. You see there's a number of beehives, and those bees are not for honey. They are only for restoration purposes, and it's part of the cosmogony of the Shukuru people because they consider many of these bees magical and fundamental in ensuring the restoration of these areas. Not only them, but also, more importantly, the birds, who for them are the main restorers. And specifically, there's one type of bird that is fundamental to ensure the well-being of the restoration efforts. We are expanding all of these initiatives, but what is fascinating is the number of other nations, indigenous nations and peoples that are approaching us to be part of this large conglomerate of nations and indigenous peoples across the world. We are now emphasizing the monitoring aspect, thanks to the collaboration with AIM4Forests and AIM4Nature. We're extremely grateful of these collaborations because it enables us to upscale the work and improve the monitoring aspects that are fundamental. Here you see the work in Northeast India, you see the involvement of the schools and the importance of the youth and how they get extremely passionate through the schools of life to be actively involved and not in a theoretical way, but they also go to the degraded lands to help the community, of course, to restore. Let me move to the next one. I know that the time is pressing and I'm about to finalize. If I can have the next slide, please. And here's Bolivia. We are working with the local authorities, the Malcus and the Mamayatas, and you see how we are working in two different areas, in the Andean area with the Aymara Nation, and then also, of course, in the area of Pando, and there you see some of the indigenous peoples from Brazil that also want us to support them and participate in the other side of the border on the indigenous biocentric restoration, and they joined the School of Life in Bolivia. In the next slide, and I'm about to close, you see what Pablo was mentioning at the beginning, and I'm not going to extend myself more, how the Indigenous Biocentric Restoration Global Program that started as a different way of doing restoration, away from the books, away from what the ministries sometimes prescribe, and center in the indigenous peoples that have a unique knowledge of those territories, is directly connected to Target 2, Target 3, Target 10, 22, and 23 of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Very important, the areas that are being now monitored and that will be later on loaded into the firms will be part of the indigenous territories that need to be categorized as restored within the agreed international targets in the Convention on Biological Diversity. This is all from my side. I need to go back to deliberations in the plenary, but I thank you again for the opportunity, for the use of the word, and I congratulate the support of AIM4Forests to the indigenous biocentric restoration. Thank you for the use of the word, and back to you, Pablo.
Thank you so much, John, for explaining the role of this Indigenous Biocentric Restoration Global Program and the connection with the 3 Rio Conventions, and how we are also strengthening the connection with Ground, with FERN, with Aurora as the monitoring tools to report to Target 2 of the Commune Montreal GBF. Now it is a pleasure for me to give the floor to Iran Shukuru from the Colectivo Yupago Creca. the Chucuru people from the Caatinga biome in Brazil. We started with a small pilot project with them, and now the process is increasing. And it's very important because they are including also this relevant aspect of the cosmogony, indigenous cosmogony. Irán, você tem a palavra, Irán.
You have the floor, Iran.
Primeiro,
First of all,
obrigado pelo convite.
Thank you for
É uma
inviting me.
satisfação poder trazer
It's a real satisfaction
para
to be able
vocês que estão à frente desse
share
processo de
with you
restabelecer,
what we're facing in this
eu diria que a
process
vida,
to
fortalecer a vida no
strengthen
planeta, né?
life on the
Então, estou aqui
planet.
falando sobre a nossa experiência,
Here
uma
we'd like to
experiência
share our
local,
experience, our
né?
local
A gente
experience,
traz como essa arte local, né?
where we use
Baseado
our
em
local
restabelecer a vida no
know-how,
nosso
which is based
território,
on
que fica
restoring life
no
on our
Brasil,
territory
na região
in Brazil,
semiárida nordeste
in a
brasileiro,
semi-arid
né? Eu sou do
part of
povo
northeastern
indígena
Brazil.
Chucuru de Ororubá, né? A gente vem
In
fazendo esse
the
trabalho de restauração
Shukuru
biocêntrica
people's
e que a
biome of
gente
Caatinga,
denomina enquanto
where we engage in biocentric
cosmonucleação
restoration,
regenerativa,
and it's
né? E
regenerative
com esses
cosmogony,
processos
as we
de
call it.
envolvimento
The process
comunitário, né?
involves
Escola de vida,
communities,
escola
schools of life,
viva, né? Que na realidade é
living schools.
projeto, mas é projeto que
This is a project,
perpassa, né, por vários recomeços, né? E aí
and
a vida
it's all about new
muito
beginnings.
fundamentada nessa complexidade,
Life
nessa
is very
cooperação, na
complex.
colaboração, nas
There's
imprecisões,
cooperation.
né? Então, e na regeneração, tudo que é
However,
vivo
we
é
need to take into
regenerativo.
account all these
E
different
aí uma
elements. Anything
coisa
that's
muito
alive
interessante
can
do
generate
nosso
new life.
trabalho,
And
que
one thing
nós,
that's really
povos
interesting
originários,
about our
consideramos
work
a
is
terra
that we as
viva,
indigenous
né?
peoples
Então,
feel
se a
that
gente está
the
regenerando,
land is alive.
restabelecendo
Therefore, we are
esse
regenerating and
equilíbrio ao
restoring
organismo
that
vivo, né? A
balance between
gente
living
invoca
organisms
da própria
and
terra, né,
from our very land.
uma relação de
We
leveza, de
are evoking
sutileza, de
a
afeto. Ou
new,
seja,
lighter,
viver a
more
experiência que a
caring
gente traz
relationship.
as nossas ciências nesses processos, não só
We
de pensar, né,
use
mentais, né, do nosso
science-based
comportamento,
approaches,
das nossas
also looking at our
interações
behaviors,
com o
our
espaço
interaction
físico
with
e
our
espiritual, né?
physical and
Mas
spiritual
uma
spaces.
relação de território vivo,
This is a relationship, however,
regenerativo.
with a regenerative,
Então, dessa
live land.
espiritualidade, aqui eu não
Therefore,
trago os ritos,
there
os
is that
processos, os
spirituality, and there are
cerimoniais,
different rituals,
mas esse
processes, and
interesse
ceremonies.
pelos outros e por si mesmo, né? Então,
And
esse
it brings about
interesse
benefits
pelos
for us
outros
and
é o outro
others,
pedra, é o outro água, é
for
o outro
rocks,
pássaro.
for water,
Então, nessa
and
relação de
birds.
sutileza, de cuidado, de
In this
afeto,
relationship
né, a
that's
gente tem que pisar
care-based,
leve e muito
we
devagar
need
no
to
chão que
be
pisa para evitar
gentle with
tropeços,
the
mas porque a
ground
gente está
that
pisando
we
em algo
step
que é
on,
vivo. E tudo que
because
é
we're
vivo é
stepping on something that's
regenerativo.
alive, and
Então,
anything that's
entrar em
alive
contato em algo
can
vivo
regenerate
e
life.
se encontrar nesse lugar. Acreditamos que o lugar
And given that
não é
we are
separado
there,
do ser.
we
Né? O
believe
território somos
that
nós, né?
place
E
is
aí é
not separated
autoconhecimento.
separate from
E
itself.
eu não sei
There's a
se
higher
vocês
knowledge there.
conseguem
I don't know
imaginar
whether you can try
quanto de
to
vida que passou a
imagine
retornar simplesmente
just how much
por
life
essa
came
ação nossa
back
de guardar o nosso
simply
lugar, que chamamos de
because
Boa
we
Vista.
looked
Então,
after
águas antes
our land, Boa
barrentas, né, de
Vista,
sedimentos quando chove, agora poucas
under
turvas correm em
rain,
córregos
water, and
circundados
sediment.
por vegetação ripária, vegetação demais, né? Mas que
Vegetation
formam
came
túmulos em
alive,
meio
lots of
à
different
mata
vegetation.
rala, mas que já está apresentando pequenas galerias, né? E aí, por exercer
There are already
esse nosso
small
direito de ter uma
galleries
floresta
of vegetation,
regenerada,
and
mas não é
there's
só
a
o
new
direito da
forest that's
floresta, é o
being
direito da
regenerated.
floresta,
We're not
casa
talking
dos
about
espíritos,
forest
casa
rights, however.
dos encantados.
This is the home
A
of
gente imerge assim nessa
spirits,
arte de
and we are
imaginar, de
immersed
pensar, né?
in
Então
this
a gente fica aqui a pensar nessas nossas
imaginary
estratégias,
approach.
métodos,
We think
né,
about our different
métricas,
strategies,
né, de
our
criar condições
metrics,
para que a
and
água
try to create conditions
da cachoeira, né, da
so
mata
that
protegida, ela
water
possa descer
can
de forma
create
cristalina.
more life. The water is now crystal clear, and some plants that are now alive on this regenerated territory are no longer being slashed and burned. For instance, we engage in biomedicine, we use hay to make biojewelry, and depending on the different harvests, we can generate different things. We, of course, need permission to harvest different resources, permission to provide care. In this caring relationship with our land, there are rules. It's, as I said, care-based. Therefore, threats no longer represent the same jeopardy on this land. And this helps us be more wholesome in our land and our bodies. For instance, when birds sing and the wind whispers, this is all part of it. This is an enchanted approach to this poetic project, because what we're doing is going back to our land. What we're doing is, as we regenerate, is once again protecting our land and going back to what we used to be. Colonialism broke that system and burnt it down. And what we're now trying to do is protect our land. And the key here are the guardians of this land. They look after their land and also showcase it. So what we're doing is also to try to showcase this land, this subtle, gentle relationship. And we even look at land's metabolism and try to develop subtle, gentle intelligence, which is deeply rooted. We feel what happens to our land, and therefore we can generate not just salvation for our land, but we can heal the wounds that we ourselves are causing. There's a reason behind this restoration. It's so that we can see those beings who gave us our name and then became extinct. We want them to come back. Therefore, the Shukuru people of Yoruba are named after a bird that had land and no longer does. And we're also named after a tree. The Shukuru people, without that single Urubu bird, would like to regenerate land that is truly alive. And as we try to fill those voids that were caused by colonialism, we are regenerating and giving back life, bringing about this new relationship of care. And that's what spirituality is about for us, and it opens up new paths for people. The aim behind development for us is to educate and convey knowledge, where we learn through beings that aren't necessarily human beings. We learn through life on our land, so that we can generate a different awareness. We learn from our trees, our rocks, our water, and this alone can generate a wonderful book for us all to read. For instance, a plant can be one page in this book of living land. So we learn from these beings that are live content and that invite us to live. So our work in the School of Life and through this education is presented through the learnings of a bird. What we're doing here with FAO is going back to being those people who wish to protect their land and going back to that bird, the urubu bird, gave us our name. Thank you. Thank you, Iran. Thank you very much.
Sorry, I know we are running very late, and now it is a pleasure to give the floor to Mari Guay from Centro Sindes from Peru. They have been working with 72 schools of life in the Andean region. Mari, la palabra es tuya, por favor, 5 minutitos porque estamos atrasados.
Mary, you have the floor. You have just 5 minutes, I'm afraid, because we're running a little bit late.
Hola, buenos días o buenas tardes con todos.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, everyone.
Es una alegría poder compartir la
It's a real
experiencia
pleasure
de
to be
Perú
able to share
en las
Peru's
comunidades
experience with you
indígenas que nosotros llamamos
and that of
originarias.
the indigenous
La siguiente, por favor.
peoples who we call original
El
peoples.
ámbito de intervención de nosotros,
This is the
como lo mencionó
intervention
John,
area.
es muy
And as
árido.
John mentioned,
Tenemos
this is a
muy poca
very
lluvia
arid land. We have very little
estamos
rainfall.
situados entre los 3.000 a
And
4.400 metros
we are between
sobre
3,000
el
and
nivel
4,400
del mar.
meters above sea
Acá
level.
podemos apreciar en
Here,
la diapositiva de
on
izquierda
this
que hay
slide on the left-hand
muy
side, you can
poca,
see that
árboles o arbustos nativos.
there are few
Acá vemos
native
un
trees and
registro de
shrubs.
quinoa,
What we have
donde hay
here
muy
are
pocas especies
leftovers
de
of
árbol que
quinoa,
vamos a ver más
remnants.
adelante.
There are few tree species, and we'll talk about
siguiente,
that
por
later.
favor.
Next slide, please.
La siguiente. Ya. Estamos trabajando en toda la
We
zona sur con
are
la unidad de
working
pueblos
across the
indígenas
entire
de FAO.
southern area with
Nos
the Indigenous
ubicamos
Peoples
en la
unit of
región
FAO.
cerca del lago Titicaca que ustedes ven
We're located
en
close to
azul,
Lake
toda la
Titicaca, which you
región
can
de
see
Puno,
in
y nos
blue in the
ubicamos
Puno region
en
and
Arequipa, en la parte
in
alta,
Arequipa,
Cayoma, y en Moquegua
in
también
Cayoma, the
en la
higher,
parte
and
alta.
also
Son
in
fríos
Moquegua
intensos
in the highlands.
que pueden ir
It's
de los
an intensely
menos
cold
15,
climate,
14
minus 14,
hasta los
15
20 centígrados en
to
el
some
día.
20 degrees
Como no se tiene
centigrade over the
árboles,
course of the day.
hay
And given that there are
especies
no trees,
vegetales,
there are
plantas
plant
medicinales,
species,
plantas de
medicinal
rituales
plants,
que se están
and plants that are
perdiendo.
used
La
for
quinoa que
rituals that are
vemos en la
being
parte
lost.
baja, esa quinoa tiene la
The
propiedad,
quinoa
es un
tree that
árbol
you can see
nativo
at the
que tiene
bottom
la
has its own
propiedad de cosechar
properties.
agua y en
It
el momento de
absorbs
estrés
water, harvests
hídrico
water, and at times of
lo suelta,
water scarcity or water
beneficiando a
stress,
toda la
this tree
biodiversidad que se
lets
encuentra
out the water has
alrededor de él.
absorbed, benefiting all the
También es
biodiversity that
importante
exists around
mencionar
it.
que retiene sus
It also,
troncos, retienen sus ramas,
its branches and log,
evitan la
tree
erosión de
trunk,
suelos.
avoid soil erosion as well. That's
Arriba
important to
vemos
mention.
la
Further up,
especie de guanaco, un guanaco,
you can see a
que está en
guanaco,
vía de extinción
which
en este
is at
corredor
risk of
andino que va
extinction
desde
in the Andean
Arequipa,
corridor
Cayoma hacia Moquegua, hacia
that
la
goes all the
región
way
de
from
Moquegua. Lo
Arequipa to
importante
Moquegua.
acá es ver que si
What's
bien
important
estamos
here
en la parte
is that
altiplánica, los
although
ríos,
these are highlands,
las fuentes de aguas que van al río
the
Amazonas
bodies of water
nacen en la
that
región de
go into the
Arequipa, en
Amazon
un
River
pueblito
come
originario que
from
es Tuti.
Arequipa,
Y un
in
intercambio
Tuti
que
more
tuvimos
specifically.
con la parte que nombraba
That is
John,
the
la parte
main
de
source of
COFI,
water. And
donde
as John
tuvimos
was saying,
reuniones con hermanos indígenas de
we
Brasil.
met with
Ellos
our indigenous
hablaban
sisters
de
and brothers
toda
from
la
Brazil,
contaminación
and
y
they
los
told us
problemas
about
que ocasiona
contamination
todos estos
and
terrenos degradados
all the
en la
different
parte
problems
alta.
that
O sea que
degraded
estamos
highlands
íntimamente
bring about.
ligados
So
al ser proveedor de agua que viene de la
this is
parte
all closely
altiplánica
linked,
hacia la
being
parte
providers of water
amazónica.
from the
La
highlands
siguiente, por
to
favor.
the Amazon.
Ya, lo que es importante
Thank you.
acá mencionar y que
What's
lo
important
mencionó
to
John
mention
y que yo lo
here
ratifico
that John
es
also
que nuestra
referred
metodología
to
es
is
empezar
that
con las escuelas de
our
vida de cada
methodology
comunidad.
begins with
Esta
schools of life
escuela
in
de vida,
community.
antes de iniciar esta escuela de vida, se hace
Before
un
we
acuerdo
begin these
con los
schools of life,
líderes
we establish an
políticos
agreement
donde
with
se les
political
explica el
leaders
proyecto,
where we tell
si
them
están
about
de
our
acuerdo a que
project,
participen
ask
y con la comunidad,
whether
con
they
sus
agree to
líderes
participate,
o
and we
autoridades
also speak to
originarias, donde
Indigenous
ellos aceptan de
leaders and
participar en este
communities
proyecto.
who also need to agree
Y
to take part in
a
the
través de
project.
estas escuelas de vida, la
Through these
siguiente, por
schools
favor,
of life, next slide, please.
es donde es la parte más interesante, porque
This is
ellos
the
nos
most interesting
reciben
part
como los
because
expertos, pero
they
realmente los
see us as
expertos son ellos,
experts.
porque
However,
son
they
ellos
are the
que
experts because
comparten sus
they're the ones who
conocimientos
share their knowledge, their
ancestrales,
ancestral
sus
knowledge,
rituales, como
their
hablaba
rituals,
el compañero de Brasil, y
as
comparten
our
su visión
colleague from Brazil said,
mundo.
and they share their worldview.
En estas escuelas de vida, que a veces son 3
In these
o
schools of
4 en una
life,
misma comunidad,
and then there
todas
might
las
be 3 or
veces que sean
4 in one
necesarias,
community.
se identifican todos los recursos,
All the
se
different
identifican
resources are identified, all
las
the
prácticas, o sea, cuál
practices
áreas
are identified,
están
therefore also which
siendo para ser restaurada,
areas
qué es lo que han
are
hecho
being
ellos
prepared for
anteriormente
restoration,
para
what's
restaurar,
already been
qué
done to
conocimientos
restore
han
their land,
aplicado para
and what
restaurar
kind of
esta
knowledge has
área.
been used to restore their
Y se
land.
identifican los sistemas alimentarios
Food
y los
systems are
cambios
also
en su gestión de territorio.
identified
Y
as
ahí
well as
tomamos
land use
conciencia que
changes, and
muchos
that's where
rituales
we gain
o
awareness of the fact that
orientación que
many
daban a ciertos terrenos
rituals
que ahora no lo hacen,
or
ha perjudicado a la madre tierra,
approaches
que
they
ellos
take to
tienen
their
una
land
veneración
have
y
jeopardized Mother
rituales
Earth,
muy ligados a la tierra,
and
al
they have
agua,
many
al
rituals that are
momento de
closely
la
linked with
cosecha, al
land,
inicio de
water,
siembras,
harvest,
están muy
time of harvest,
ligados, pero al
and
mismo tiempo, como decía el compañero de Brasil,
at the same
estamos
time, as our colleague from
perjudicando
Brazil was
la
saying, we
madre
are
tierra y somos
jeopardizing Mother
nosotros los que
Earth, and
ocasionamos
we
grandes
are the
problemas
ones
ambientales que
who
está
cause
viviendo
most
nuestra
of the
madre tierra.
environmental problems that
En
Mother Earth is living through.
En esta escuela de vida también se
In
elige un
this
comité de
school of
restauración.
life, a restoration committee is elected.
Este espacio, ellos toman un liderazgo para motivar a todo lo que se
The
planifica
committee
en
takes
plan de
on
restauración de la
leadership role
comunidad,
in terms of any
donde ellos
restoration
eligen
activities the
cuáles son las
community
áreas que
engages
van a
in, where they
restaurar, con
decide
qué
which
especies van a
areas will be
restaurar
restored, with which
y,
species, and,
bueno, son los motivadores a nivel de la comunidad. Siguiente, por
well,
favor.
they promote these initiatives among the community.
Ustedes vieron cuando les presenté el área
When
toda, la región todo
I
área.
showed you
Bueno,
the
esta es
slide with
una experiencia que hemos hecho en
all
Guambo.
that dry land.
Se
Well, I
ha
wanted to show you
favor.
this. This is another
Perdón.
experience in Guambo.
¿Puedes ir cerrando?
I was just asking whether
Sí,
you
sí,
could
ya falta
please
un poco.
conclude soon.
Entonces, es una
Absolutely, I'm
forestación que
about
ya
to.
se ven,
Here
se
you
ve
can see
bastante la iniciativa de bosques.
the
Estos
forestry
pinos, pero
initiative taking hold. These are
hemos
pine
tenido la
trees,
preocupación de integrar las
but
especies nativas de
we
plantas
ensured that we
medicinales que se
also
están perdiendo en
included
el área.
native
Siguiente.
medicinal species that are becoming extinct
Esa es la
in
queñua que
this
yo
part of the country.
les
This
decía
is
que tiene, bueno,
Kenua,
también es un
as I was
vivero de
telling
queñua.
you.
La importancia de coordinar. Estamos
Well,
coordinando con
here again, we have the
instituciones
importance of
públicas,
coordinating
privadas y de la
our
comunidad
initiatives. We
para
have
tener en
public,
viveros
private, and
árboles
community
nativos.
initiatives so
Bueno,
that we
había
can
mucha
have
existencia
hatcheries for
de
native
disponibilidad en
trees,
Perú y también recuperar las plantas
and
nativas
so
que
that
se
we can also
estaban
recover
perdiendo.
native
Estamos
plants that
trabajando
are
más de 14
endangered. We're
especies,
working
ahí
with
lo
more than
tienen, no es
14
necesario
species. You have them there on
de,
the screen. I don't think
de
I need to
nombrar.
translate
La
or
siguiente.
list them. Next slide, please.
El monitoreo y seguimiento lo
Monitoring
hacíamos de
and
manera
follow-up.
rudimentaria porque, bueno, no teníamos los
This
conocimientos para
was
hacerlo,
done in quite a
pero
rudimentary
sí,
fashion because we lacked the
al momento
knowledge
de plantar
to
teníamos,
do
medíamos,
otherwise. But
meses
when it came
después, varias
to
veces se va a hacer un monitoreo en campo para medir
metrics,
cuánto se
we would
está,
measure growth, and 1 month
cuándo
later
ha
we would
sido la altura
go
que
back
está
to the field
ganando.
and
Hemos
see
empezado
just
con
how tall
especies
our
que
plants were.
tenían
We began with species that were 10 centimeters tall. And as you can see on this slide, they're 50 to 60 centimeters tall. And thanks to a colleague hired by the United Kingdom, we are now improving our technical monitoring through the use of digital technology, using the internet, and many other techniques. I have one last slide. The other one, please. The knowledge that we garner through exchanges with our elders and youth is set out in books that showcase the importance of both flora and fauna for our lives and for the lives of our communities, because plants are used for rituals, for medicinal purposes, and these are the very plants that are at risk of extinction, that are endangered, and that are being propagated in our hatcheries. This is my very last slide. Some of the lessons learned. Restoration activities need to be linked with productive activities, which is why we have pine plantations, so that we can encourage the community to plant just as many native trees. That's what's being done, even more native trees, perhaps than pine trees. Water is of the utmost priority for all communities we work with, and there are over 72. Always speak of the importance of water. That's always raised. Also, the importance of raising awareness of environmental care and reforestation in dry periods. Water is, again, extremely important. The importance of recovering ancestral knowledge has been essential, because they can show us how to restore native plants so that they can grow successfully, for instance, and so that our species don't die out. We have been able to work together, thanks to the support provided by John and Pablo, with institutions such as the Ministry of Agriculture and Irrigation, Ministry of the Environment, Agro-Rural Moquegua, Arequipa, and SURF4. With all these bodies, we determined which areas, and with Indigenous peoples with whom we have worked, we also made important decisions. We are also training leaders as champions of biocentric restoration. They stay behind in these communities, and they will be promoting this work despite the project being finalized. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Mari. Thank you so much. And just to conclude, thank you again, Julia, Yelena, and all your team, because it's a great honor to be part of AIM4Forests and to establish also this monitoring process through indigenous-led activities. Thank you so much for your support.
Thank you, Pablo, Jon, Aran, Mari. I think that was worth listening and learning. It was really great. Although we are running a little bit over time, if people are willing and able to stay online with us, we have one more very important presentation. In fact, the first deliverable under our new program. And without further ado, I will pass to Ashley Steele, a forestry officer in the Forestry Division, to present the first deliverable under our program.
The first launch under the Aim for Nature project. These are guidelines to support countries in reporting on freshwater inland waters restoration under Target 2 of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. So our target is to ensure that by 2030, at least 30% of areas of degraded terrestrial, inland water, and coastal and marine ecosystems are under effective restoration. And this is in order to enhance biodiversity and ecosystem functions and services, ecological integrity, and connectivity. And I've pulled these 4 out because I'd like you to memorize them. These are the goals, the outcomes that we expect for Target 2, and that's going to inform how we design our restoration reporting guidance for the headline indicator area under restoration. So freshwater inland water ecosystems, and I use this mouthful because there's a huge amount of expertise that people associate with the word freshwater, experts who believe they're freshwater experts, and also inland waters experts, and we want all that expertise to the table. So these ecosystems are home to 12% of the species on Earth, but they cover only 2% of the area. They provide us their drinking water, direct food production in terms of inland fisheries, water quantity regulation, water quality regulation, climate regulation as well, and of course, recreational opportunities and tremendous cultural value, some of which we heard a bit in those earlier presentations, which I was very happy to hear, thinking about water moving downstream and the role of forests and water together. So these are priceless, and so I don't usually like to talk about economic valuations, but sometimes they have an impact. And there was a recent study from 2023 that estimated the global value of ecosystem services from all natural lakes at 3.1 trillion US dollars. That's just lakes alone. And a much older study looked at the value of meeting the UN Sustainable Development Goals for freshwater, and that would increase their value of those services by 18%. So that's a big value on restoring these ecosystems. And they are degraded. So if we look to the right, these are data that describe the SDG indicator 6.3.2. And this assesses the proportion of a country's water bodies, that's rivers, lakes, and aquifers, that have good ambient water quality. And that takes into account data on conductivity, acidification, nitrogen, phosphorus, and oxygen. And what these data show are that only 50%, not only 50%, the other way around, 50% of countries report degraded ecosystems. And these data also highlight the fact that there are many countries without sufficient data to report. And in these cases, we don't know the situation on the ground. And that's also a call for more monitoring data and more information. So restoration can encompass a very wide range of activities. This restorative continuum is from the toolkit produced by FAO, the Secretariat for the Convention on Biodiversity, and the Society for Ecological Restoration. And we see it can encompass a very wide range of activities that go from the very gentle, such as reducing societal impacts or improving ecosystem services, all the way up to fully recovering native ecosystems. And I think when people hear restoration, they think sometimes of something very sweet and gentle, like planting a little seedling. But I want to show you sometimes what freshwater, inland water restoration looks like. This top picture is a crane in the middle of a river. And it's important to get in there and do some re-engineering after there's been a large history, long history of human degradation. And to think, when we're thinking about now reporting on what's the area, why would someone put all that money and energy into that little space with that huge crane? And the reason is because this spot is linked to everything above it and everything below. So by restoring this one area, we can enhance biodiversity, mostly all the way upstream, allowing species to migrate up. And we can enhance all kinds of ecosystem services downstream, particularly those ones that are part of our Target 2, downstream as we improve the flow of water and sediment and nutrients downstream. So sometimes we need to think a little bit bigger than right where the on the ground or in the water activities are happening. And I provide this also picture. Sometimes freshwater restoration is quite gentle and sweet, and planting seedlings as well. So these new guidelines that we're launching today, you can have them now with this QR code. You'll be the first one to download it today. And these represent a collaboration of colleagues from 14 organizations. And they range from international agencies to NGOs to universities across the globe. And I'm not just proud to have collaborated with all these folks. I'm really thankful because they brought a tremendous amount of expertise. The QR code's coming back, just a second. I see photos up. They brought a tremendous amount of expertise to this work, and that deeply enriched what we could bring to the topic. So these guidelines, and they're guiding principles, not prescriptive directions. They build on this interconnectedness of all elements within a watershed. And we heard a little bit about this. I was very happy for those presentations that were just before me. And we define the area under restoration for reporting on Target 2 as the area over which any of those 4 desired outcomes that were memorized earlier, biodiversity, ecosystem function and services, ecological integrity, and connectivity, are enhanced. And this definition is in parallel to that of the IUCN's restoration barometer and it acknowledges that the area under restoration can be a lot bigger than the area of on the ground or in the water activities. And finally, we initiate a discussion of the global data layers that are available for assessment and monitoring. And we provide some example data sets that cover all the biomes, the various ecological attributes, and all the desired target 2 outcomes. So overall, these new guidelines aim to enable effective restoration and reporting that incentivizes the most effective kinds of restoration. And this can happen at the local, national, and global levels. And at the same time acknowledges that complexity of freshwater ecosystems, which are different from the other categories of ecosystems. So we have a couple key messages, most of which you already know from this presentation. So freshwater restoration, it differs from terrestrial and marine restoration, and it's unique. It's built on an understanding of watershed principles. So everything inside a watershed is inextricably linked by the flow of water, and therefore the area under restoration can be much larger than the area of those activities that we actively see. And finally, that the cycle of restoration, from prioritization to reporting to monitoring, and these parallel processes of watershed and inland fisheries assessments can often use the very same indicators. And there's a very large amount of relevant geospatial data existing at the global scale to support these efforts. And we provide some examples in the appendix or the supplementary material of our report. This is what the actual guidance looks like. So the area under restoration is the aggregate of 3 potential areas. It's the area of on-the-ground activity, the area upstream that's expected to benefit from enhanced biodiversity, and the areas downstream onto the side that are expected to see any of the enhanced outcomes under target 2. And we listed as water changes in water quality, flows of water, wood, and sediment, because these are the kinds of changes that can be estimated by an expert from a restoration plan. And these are the kinds of changes that underpin the cascade of impacts we want to enhance these outcomes under target 2. As we heard from Christina from the convention, there was a recommendation for the GET, and we are using the GET. And this entire process is being operationalized inside of the framework for ecosystem restoration monitoring, the firm. And you can see on the left, we have some example restoration activities in a very example watershed and how those might be reported, what the area might be reported in lime green. We have similar guidance for non-flowing waters. So what's next? We have to work with countries, and we want to provide some case studies on reporting restoration and on prioritizing and monitoring those activities. We want to support capacity building. For example, we have an e-learning on resilient rivers that shows the links between forest, freshwater, and inland fisheries. It's currently available in English and Spanish, and we hope it'll be available in French soon. And we're developing guidance on monitoring across watersheds. So we want to bring together this full restoration cycle that looks at assessing a watershed for where restoration is needed, prioritizing those activities, reporting on those activities, and monitoring those activities with the parallel pathways of watershed assessments and inland fisheries assessments. So we look forward to that work, and I am happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ashley. Well, we're well over time, so I've seen it's been really. We've had almost 200 people in Zoom asking a lot of questions, and they've been answered live in the Zoom platform, which has been really great. And for those of us here, we have the opportunity to talk more because there is a small reception just outside that door to reward you for being with us all. So really, thank you everybody that stayed on Zoom, and we hope you learned something new. As I'm sure you've heard, we work through partnerships, and I've also seen in the Zoom chat and the Zoom Q&A many people reaching out wanting to partner with us, which is fabulous. So please do not hesitate to get in touch. We've put all our contact emails in the Zoom, and thanks again so much to the speakers. It was really great hour and a half, and signing off from FAO headquarters. Thank you. Have a great evening, morning, afternoon. Bye.